My guest today is Avery Bartlett, who handles short-form videos for socials at Avalanche, aka Ava Labs. Avery has accumulated over 30 million views across all social channels and has grown an account with over 100,000 followers. Avery has a unique background working as a software engineer at the Home Depot after an illustrious running career where he was a 3-time state champ in Florida, 5-time All-American at Georgia Tech, and a professional runner. If you want to learn how to reinvent yourself to be the best in whatever you do, you will love this episode. LFG, baby. Let's start vibing.
Zach French is a bar-certified attorney, and nothing expressed by Zach during Web3 with me shall be considered legal advice. All the opinions expressed by Zach and his guests are solely their own opinions. All content in Web3 with me is for informational purposes only. Zach and his podcast guests may maintain positions in the securities discussed during Web3 with me.
Well, welcome to the show, Avery.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Happy to be on. It's been a while since I've been on podcasts, and I know I was mentioning I used to have one for like 70 episodes. And viewership aside, everything aside, it was the best thing I think I've done, because people really underestimate how much value just like putting all your energy into speaking does for you week over week over week. I became just such a good speaker over time, but I'm kind of losing it now. So I'm happy to get back into it. Yeah.
Well, we'll just have to start bringing you on over and over and over again.
Yeah. And over and over. Yeah.
Well, I usually start these episodes with a question to let the audience get to know you better. It's your founding story. So feel free to start wherever you want.
Founding story. So I guess in the context of Web3, like most people, I think in 2014, I bought Bitcoin for the first time. Obviously, it was to buy illegal things on the internet. It was a fake ID. The first time ever. I still had some left over. I got Bitcoin at like, I want to say it was like $500. And I hodled that all the way to Bitcoin was $3,000, and I sold it at $3,000. I was like, I just 6x'd my money. That was like, did absolutely insane at the time. Obviously, now that could have been a lot more, but you know, hindsight's 2020. And dabbled, pay attention to the space, on and off kind of throughout then, but not really getting into it until this past year, 2020, 2021. You know, it got big again. It got in the mainstream again, got my attention. Really had some deep aha moments with it, like I know we all have. Dove down into the rabbit hole a lot. Still am. It's a very, very deep space. It's very, very fascinating. And eventually landed a job with Avalanche, doing marketing, which has been the absolute greatest thing ever. I've had so much fun in this job. I can't even describe it. Just the energy in the space, the energy in the team, the energy in the work, just the day-to-day, waking up every morning, just getting excited to compete against some of the biggest chains out there, Solana, Matic, and just like wanting to win in a way that's more meaningful than I can describe. So it's been tons and tons of fun.
I love that. But I'm gonna press you a little bit because we have had a conversation before this. Yeah. You have a really interesting background beyond Web3. I'd love to hear a little bit about your previous running background.
That's right.
And how that helped build up and the various ventures that you had in between that help you get hired at Avalanche. Mm-hmm. So let's start back at the old days.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure, the glory days. So basically up until the Olympics this past year, so in 2021, my entire life, literally since I was probably 13 years old, every decision I made was based around, would it help me become a better runner? Would it make me a worse runner, right? Because I was just obsessive about track and field. So I was an 800-meter runner, middle distance, competed throughout high school, you know, did pretty decent in high school. I was in Florida, 3-time Florida state champ, you know, glory days back then. Went to college at Georgia Tech, worked hard, did decent, ACC champ, 5 times All-American. Very, very proud of that. But one thing that it did for me that is paying dividends right now is, so my final year, so my fifth year, the first semester of my fifth year. So I did 4.5 in college, right? I was good enough to be at like the tail end of being pro. So like think of like second round draft pick. I was about that good. Okay. But in pro running, in pro any sports, you can give yourself more value by being more marketable. So I was like, okay, I've been on and off video editing kind of my entire life, just kind of as a hobby. Let me try and just get big on social media, get a following, because hopefully I have a good personality and people want to see that on top of my performances. And at the time, late 2019, TikTok was just started to get being talked about, right? It was this really interesting era of TikTok that many social media go through in like the early stages when people just, hear of it. They're like, oh, what's this about? What's this about? There's more demand than there is supply. And what that does is it's this beautiful window in early social media where you can just grow an audience kind of super fast. And I kind of saw that. And there were very, very few track creators. None of them were, I guess, had as much credibility as I had. And I also thought that I could make better videos. So I just kind of focused 99% of my brain power on how do I get big on TikTok. And I did I would say I accomplished it, right? I had quite a few videos over, that got caught in the algorithm, just enough credit to really have the result that I wanted in the pro scene. So eventually got signed by a shoe company, had the worst pro career of all time. Literally, it was so bad. It, ends up, making the Olympics is hard, imagine that. So it was absolutely probably the hardest year and a half.
I was thinking about going out next week. I've run a marathon before.
I know. Yeah. Apparently it's, it's not as easy as it sounds. So yeah, I mean, the pro cycle, the Olympics didn't work out for me, which I'm okay with. I got the opportunity. I don't think I wouldn't have done anything different. I absolutely gave it all I had. And then once that ended, it was time to find, all right, now what else is Avery Bartlett? Because you hear about like the identity crisis of athletes once they retire, especially pro athletes. You push your career as hard as you can. You, from such a young age, you are just like the man in the room. You have just such an identity and such a valuable identity, right? Like, kind of like being an athlete's cool, whatnot. But then once you retire, you kind of have to start over. You kind of have to build yourself again. And I kind of studied it a little bit. I was listening to podcasts about like, how did athletes deal with retiring? How did athletes deal with retiring? And the answer is simple. It's, it's what you hear with most things in life. It's just like, be grateful for what you had and get the mindset that you had when you were a freshman in high school or a freshman or, whenever you first started picking up the sport. So in my mind, I had just gone close to the top of one mountain, fell absolutely off it. I'm kind of near the bottom of something else. And I had to pick a direction of like, what other mountain do I want to climb? And as I said, crypto caught my attention. And so I was like, oh, I'm just going to get in this space. As general as that, I said, I'm going to get into this space. Very, very broad. I didn't have a direction. I didn't know what I wanted to do in this space. I just wanted to get in this space. So I turned my brain off and I just started just like thinking with my hands. So any hackathon I'd see, I would see like, all right, I'm going to do that. I would think maybe 5 seconds about an idea and I'm just going to start building in this direction. It's probably going to be bad, but I'm probably going to learn a lot. I'm probably going to learn of what I like doing. I'm probably learn about what I don't like doing. And so I kind of described it as a hill climbing algorithm. So in computer science, you have something called a randomized hill climbing algorithm. And basically, so you have, points on a graph. Think of it like a 2D mountain, right? Computers don't have eyeballs, right? Like humans can see, okay, that's the top of the mountain. But what computers have to do is they have to kind of like use math to kind of figure out where the top is. And what they do is they pick a random amount of points on the bottom, see whichever one's highest, and just kind of like climb. just move in the higher direction until you can't get any higher. And that's what we call a local minimum. Then you randomly pick another point, climb until, hopefully you find which hill can, has the most potential as is the highest point. So that was kind of my mentality. I was going to try a bunch of random things and see what I enjoyed, pursue that, see what I was good at, pursue that. If I wasn't good at it, randomly restart, try something else. Long story short, I ended up making TikToks for Avalanche.
So let's dig in a little bit to this, because what I hear from you is you're taking the mentality of being a professional athlete, and I guess the lack of fear of failure, right? If you work hard enough, you're going to figure something out. You're going to figure out your threshold, if you will. And not a lot of people have that. A lot of people, myself included many times, will go into something new and there'll be such a big fear of failure that you don't even really get started, right?
Right.
That mentality has got to be coached into you to find kind of that push beyond the fear.
Right.
Is it for you? Is it just second nature at this point where you're just kind of
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
I would say this was learned by the hardest way possible. So going back into my pro running journey, I learned the lesson of it's really dangerous, especially if you're doing hard things. If you're doing, easy stuff like, going a pretty safe 9 to 5 throughout the rest of your life, you can value results pretty hard, right? Because wins are probably easy and losses are probably far in between. So you can put a lot of emphasis on the end result. But whenever you get into doing things that are just extremely difficult, if you're trying to be in the top 0.5% of anything, really anything, for me it was running, but this applies to anything. It's very, very dangerous to put a lot of emotion on the end result. Because just the nature of doing hard things, you're going to fail. You're going to work 100 hours on something that could give you nothing in return. Just the nature of hard things. So for me, trying to be in the the 0.5, the 0.1% of track and field, the sacrifices are immense. I don't really have to go into that. Just you kind of hear about it with the athlete's journey. The sacrifices are immense, and I remember it was the final season. So I had 3 seasons as a pro athlete. First season was terrible, but the excuse was I was just adjusting. I could get over it. Second season was terrible. Same excuse. I'm just adjusting. Third season, okay, no more adjusting. All right, like this is going to be the one. I'm not going to leave any stone unturned. And there's a lot of stones, right? So life was very miserable. Life was very, very miserable doing that training, especially being in track and field middle distance. It's just pain all day, being tired all the time. So go through all that sacrifice, coming up to the first race. I don't think I've ever had more confidence in my life going up into this race. I had manifested the first race of the season. I'm going to hit the Olympic standard. I'm going to qualify for the best meets. I've done the work. It's going to happen. I believe in myself. I don't care if my legs don't agree with me. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get on the starting line. I'm going to run the best race you've ever seen. I'm going to win it. It's going to be great. I deserve this. This is my fairy tale ending. I've gone through too much, right? You can see where this is going. Get on the starting line with that mentality. Like I've never been more excited for a race. First lap, it's going great. Second lap, let's finish the job. My legs just give up on me. Flounder. It's like I'm swimming. It's like I'll never forget just being so confused, just in last place, coming down that home stretch and coming across a line. I think this is like the most sober ego death you can have. You know what I mean? Like I was just like, what is life? Like this doesn't make any sense. How I've this was my fairy tale ending. This didn't happen. I got last place in the race. Didn't even break my high school PR. And I had worked so hard for it. So pretty much what that taught me was that if you're going for a 10, like if you're expecting a 10 out of something and you go up and you fall short, you're not going to go down to a 0 baseline like, whatever. I wanted a 10. I didn't get it. I went to a -50, right? And it kind of spun me out for the rest of the season. Like I had trouble like believing in myself. I had trouble doing the work. I just kind of became a bit of a brat to pick myself up from that loss. And so that kind of taught me the dangers of putting so much emotion towards a result, especially when you're doing hard things, especially when it's something that you really, really want. So when I retired and I was just trying to just fail at as many things as possible, the mindset was that, okay, like I want to continue doing hard things. Like I still, believe I have something great in myself, but I have to focus more on the results that it gives me as like building my knowledge base rather than building my follower count or building my professional relationship. So it's like, I'm just going to get good at being me. And to get good at you, the easiest way to do that, for me at least, is to just like fail at things and have those lessons just like nailed into your head rather than like reading a book where you get the ideas but it's not like as instinctual. Like lessons are way more instinctual and way more valuable if you learn them with action rather than, if you just read a book. I'm not saying books aren't valuable, but I'm just saying I feel like it's more productive just to put in the work to learn things rather than putting in the time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a lot of, you could draw parallels between a person who has 4 degrees and has gone through the schooling versus someone that's run 4 businesses, right?
100%.
So the entrepreneur is more likely to succeed in the next business 99 times out of 100 than the person who's got 4 degrees. The person with 4 degrees could be able to provide valuable insights. They may be able to help in certain ways, but to be at that one position, you need the experiential just as much as you need the kind of like the learning side of it, I guess the content consuming side of it. And
not saying it's not valuable.
Right. No, you need it. You build your base as you go, though. You're gonna, if you're looking at weighing two different things, experiential learning tends to add more value quicker. Right.
100%.
If you're doing
it's
it
not
the
as
right
fun,
way.
but
yeah,
100%.
I mean, I deal with
100%.
that with this podcast. I'm sitting here like empathizing with what you're saying. I'm like, like I think about all the time,
100%.
like, how do I get more viewers? How do I get more followers? It's like, well, why don't you think about what it takes to get a lot? Like, what are the people with a lot of followers doing? Right. And, they are forming their own viewpoints. They are producing content on a regular basis. Right. It's just, there's very much this period of content production. And I'd love to hear your thoughts when you started first at TikTok, making your TikToks around track and field versus now working for a company, what your mindset is like in order to reach a bigger audience. But you're shooting into the abyss, right? You're basically like building this resume of just experience so that when you continuously produce for a certain amount of time, someone can go back. It's almost like someone can go back and see like, whoa, look at, Avery's first videos versus like what he's done here. Right. Like, and that's just as important for your audience to see as it is for you to see. So I guess, how
100%.
did you think about, like, obviously you're like, I'm early to TikTok, which is a great thing. Right. I didn't even know TikTok was around in 2014, to be honest with you.
2019.
Oh, you said 2014. I was like, whoa.
That would have been crazy. Wow. Yeah.
So 2019 was early TikTok, pre-COVID TikTok. But like, what was your mentality there? Because you had kind of already had the experience where you didn't need to attach yourself to getting a ton of views or a ton of results. I imagine your focus was on producing the best possible content and getting better at producing better content. So like, take me through that journey.
For sure. So content when I was a runner was actually a lot easier than it is now for one simple reason, is that I was in this space from the age of 14 all the way to 24. So at the time I was making TikToks, I think I was 22. But the mindset that I had is just 100%, maybe 99% just empathy, right? I would ask 16-year-old Avery, if you were, back then, and if this app existed, what would you want to see on a runner? What questions do you have? And a lot of the questions, it wasn't like, oh, like what do college races look like? You know, because like you can just go onto YouTube, watch that, it's on TV, blah 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 blah. Like, you know what college races look like. But since that was such a mystical thing, what is everything around that? So the way I thought about content was using my access to D1 facilities, my access to D1 travel, and same thing with pro. How do I like answer those questions? So the videos that did the best, they weren't the race vlogs, they weren't the race videos, they weren't that. It was actually the travel videos. It was the entire team. We're all just dressed up in Georgia Tech sweatsuits, making jokes, going to hotel rooms, having dinners. I would just record the hell out of that and make it seem like you were following there with me. So I would almost never show my face in the videos. It would just be me with the camera, and you were just walking around like Avery. I would voice over stuff, crack jokes here. And so I would take you along the journeys, everything around the races, pre-race days, workouts, training room, you know, weight room, everything. So I kind of like built a great relationship with my audience there, and that was kind of how I thought about content. And I did branch out of that, but that was how I started. And then once I did that, like over time, just iteration, I learned what makes a good video without those cheat codes. So I did have a few like non-running niche videos like go viral, like over 1 million views. And the thought process with those is, I mean, it's kind of hard to describe, but just like think about like what do people want to watch, what's going to be interesting, what's going to be entertaining. So one thing that was good, and this is mainly like if you're going for a younger audience, this probably doesn't help you that much. But one thing I did was there's this trend that was creators logging onto Snapchats and just like all their user Snapchats. That was a big thing in high school, and then just like messing around with all their friends, being like, wait, you're not this person, you're like really somebody else, and just like do fun things. So I called it Snapchat's game show, where I would log onto somebody's Snapchat and I would dress up in a suit like a game show host, and I said, whoever can put on the most shirts, I'll give you $100. And I would send that out to like 100 or like 200, like everybody in this guy's message, right? Half the people wouldn't even open it because I didn't want to stay on their Snapchat for too long. But then, you know, some people would literally, like in high school, $100 a lot. So some people would literally just put on 40 shirts recording themselves and send it to me. And so I would kind of have like a game show, like a virtual game show during COVID, of like people doing fun things. And that was kind of just like a combination of, you know, this trend, the Snapchat trend, and just classic game show stuff. But when thinking about Web3 content, the hardest part about this is how do you communicate all the cool things that are happening in the space? And I don't think I need to go into what's cool in the space. You know, there's so many different angles you can take from metaverse, NFTs, DeFi. How do I take all these cool things and communicate them as clear as possible to the point that a 5-year-old could get it? That is so hard.
Very.
That is so hard.
It's a huge technical hurdle.
It is. And telling the stories in the space and whatnot, and just like, you know, as again, just go through empathy. Like, what do people want to hear? On one end of the spectrum, you want to hear people saying, oh, hey, this coin you own is going to go to the moon, therefore making you rich. But that stuff's pretty shallow.
Yeah.
There's also like the whiteboard crypto stuff of just like educating stuff as simple as possible.
Yeah.
It's also difficult. And then there's just like the narrative stuff, which I feel like is doing the best right now. I feel like this stuff focused on narrative and what chains are doing and how they're competing with each other. I feel like that's the content that's doing the best in the bear market. So that's what I think about all the time.
Yeah, that's interesting. So let's dig a little bit deeper into that. What are you focused on at Avalanche in order to facilitate the fun, simplistic kind of viewpoint and build a consistent narrative over time?
Yeah, 100%. So There's a few pillars that we're playing around with. One of them is, so this is more corporate. I'll start with the corporate run and then end with the fun stuff. So the more corporate run is obviously we're trying to make our leaders as prominent and possible or popular as possible. So that means Emin Gunsir, our founder, and then John Woo, our president. We have a whole PR team training them to go on to CNBC, Bloomberg, and kind of like have them explain these concepts in a great way that 5-year-olds can understand it. So whenever they go out to all those things, I clip the hell out of those segments. I clip the absolute hell out of those segments, and those seem to do well. People like seeing some rich looking dude on TV that they may or may not know say exciting things about the future. It's as simple as that. Those videos seem to do well. I really enjoy those. And also with those, one thing that I've been playing around with is captions. So that's something I think I would recommend. I think that could really leverage your clips online, is if you put captions on them. Just because I feel like just a small percentage of people go through all these social medias. They're probably on the bus, they're in the car, they're just in between things. They don't always have headphones. So having good, clear, concise captions that not only give the information, highlight the key words, but also kind of like communicate the pacing of what people are talking about, that can really leverage your videos. So just something I would think about, just some value. And then going to the more fun stuff. The one videos that I love doing that seem to do well on TikTok is gaming videos. So right now we have so many gaming partnerships coming up, almost too many for me to even be able to keep up with. But making videos on games, just, you don't really have to put much work into it. You just say, hey, this is the game. Here's the cool features. Here's the things you can do with it. People just like to see that. So gaming does really valuable. Gaming super valuable. And just getting better at my storytelling and how do I pace those videos and how do I have the hook. That's been a challenge. And then other than that, I've just been experimenting with different formats pretty constantly. So as I said, although go back to the hill climbing algorithm, although I have a few pillars of videos that I know do well, I'm constantly doing those random restarts and saying, oh, hey, here's a random idea. I don't know if it's good. It's probably going to suck. I'm going to put 10, 20 hours into it, make it the best I can do, put it out there, see if it does well. Most of the time it doesn't, but sometimes it does well, and that kind of adds another pillar of different content I can make.
I like that a lot. It's kind of the iterative approach, right? Where you are going in, you're kind of moving fast and breaking things. You're going in, you're trying a thing, it doesn't work, you move on, but you try it enough to get some sort of meaningful data as to whether you feel like, we're not talking, like you said, 10 to 20 hours of your time. That's not making one video. That's not making 3 videos. That's probably making 10 to 20 videos, right? And seeing if any of those start to pick up steam, and then moving on. I get countless suggestions on content, on ways that I could just make this more entertaining, right? Not in this conversation. This conversation is about uncovering insights, and it's made for people that enjoy long form content and want to learn best practices. But in terms of building out the brand, having things like 5 minutes with a random person to ask you whatever they want to ask you about Web3. That might be interesting, right? Like, ask away. It's an AMA, right? But yeah, that is pretty awesome. Can you just quickly tell us the story of getting hired at Avalanche? Because I found that was awesome.
So this was when I guess I was calling it grind season, right? I finished the pro running career, identity crisis. Let's see what else I can do. So there wasn't any thinking going on in my brain, really. It was just a lot of doing. And so I had done a few hackathons. I had killed myself over a few bounties, had little success, but that was kind of expected. Then one day I was scrolling Twitter and I saw somebody I was following, I don't remember who, was retweeted the CMO, the chief marketing officer of Avalanche, Labs, saying, "Hey, if you're into Web3, if you love traveling, if you have a friendly face, we'd love to hear from you. Make a 1-minute video pitching yourself because we want to have someone go to all of our events and just basically make live content." I was like, well, that sounds cool because they have events in like South Korea, they have events in Barcelona and Colombia. So I'm like, that sounds cool. Right now I'm working a software engineering job, which I liked at the time. So it's not that I was like in a desperate spot looking for something else, but it just sounded cool. And I just literally, without thinking, I saw the tweet maybe 5 minutes after it came out. I had just finished working out, so I was sweaty, and I just straight up just made a video pitching myself. I was like, "What's up?" And I was being kind of cocky with it too. I was like, "What's up? My name's Avery Bartlett. I'm a software engineer. I've gotten over 5 million likes on social media, and I'm perfect for your job." And then I just kind of like went through the quick 30-second story of how I was a pro runner, how I was terrible at it, how I branded myself really hard, how I had an identity crisis, how in my free time I was just grinding out hackathons. And what's up? My name is Avery. You can hire me if you want. I hope everyone else's video sucked. Sent that over, and literally within like 30 minutes, Devin was just like, "Cool, let's talk." 2 days later, hopped on a meeting. It was like, "All right, you're the guy." And I'm like, and so honestly, it was kind of overwhelming going from a software engineer at a Fortune 50 company. It was at Home Depot. Go Big Orange. I was at Home Depot, software engineer and supply chain. I was one of 10 people on my team, the only person whose native language was English. And like I was on camera maybe 15 minutes a month, just talking to my boss or something. And then going straight into marketing, making TikToks where it's just straight content, like just like as much personality as possible, traveling all over, teams completely different. So that the transition was wild, but as I said, man, it's the greatest job ever. I'm so happy to be in this industry, and I'm so happy that these events unfolded the way they did.
That's awesome, man. Let's talk a little bit about Avalanche. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know a ton about it. I know that I bought some tokens when it started to become a big deal, but like the deep research lacked. Why don't you give us like the 30-second high level, and then anything else you want to share about the company?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously we think we have the best tech, and I'll explain why. So I'm going to take Ethereum as just the baseline of what a smart contract L1 is, right? Ethereum did a lot of really, really, really great things. It uses Bitcoin's same consensus, but it added kind of a virtual machine so you can run code through it. Obviously, we know what the problems are. Don't need to repeat those too much. It's not completely scalable. There are some issues with the virtual machine, just it being the first of its kind. It's not completely optimized. How Avalanche kind of solves a few of its problems, or I guess what we call the blockchain trilemma of decentralization, scalability, and speed, is it has a new consensus algorithm called the Avalanche consensus. And you can think of this consensus algorithm as okay, so let's first describe classical consensus, then I'm going to describe Avalanche consensus because that's the easiest way. So if you have a bunch of different nodes, let's say 200 different nodes, let's represent those as people in a company, okay? To get anything done, everybody in this company, all 200 people in classical consensus, they need to talk to each other. So each person has to talk to 100 other people to agree on one thing to get anything to be done, right? And a group of 3 people, classical consensus works fine because you just have to talk to this person. You can, figure something out and move forward, make a decision, right? And this is how, and the metaphor is that, this is how blockchains produce blocks or, create trustful code. And let's say we have those 200 people, and a way to make that more efficient is we use something called gossiping. So let's break all 200 of these people into groups. Okay. So instead of me having to talk to all 199 other people to make an agreement, I'm just going to talk to 5 other people. So I'm just going to talk to literally 5 other people randomly, just random 5 people in the group. We agree on something. And then I'm going to talk to another 5 random different people and see if we agree on something. Essentially breaking the company into teams, right? And all you need is one person of the different teams to talk to each other. So one group of 5 needs to have overlap with another group of 5 to make sure it's still one company. So that's kind of how it works. So imagine we have a group of 200. I talk to 5 different people. We agree on something. I talk to another 5 different random people. We agree on something. And until that confidence kind of becomes high, it's that's how we kind of maintain consensus. And the cool thing about this is that it works and it's scalable. So I only need at max. So if we make that 200,000, I still only need to talk to a portion of that 200,000, not 50%, way less than that to reach consensus just because of the random sampling. Hopefully that made sense. So that's one thing that makes it unique, but that's not our biggest selling point. There are plenty of fast L1s out there that have figured out how to make Ethereum fast and scalable. That's really not the coolest part about us. The coolest part about us is the concept of subnets. And this is where we think we have the biggest advantage right now in Web3. Okay. Even with this incredible consensus algorithm, we still don't think there's one single chain that can encompass all of Web3. The transactions of all the different use cases of it, whether that be, I mean, if we do it for just like monetary transactions, if we want to do it with gaming, if we want to use one chain for DeFi and all this different stuff, if this becomes mass adopted, there's just no mathematical way that one chain can support this load. So with the concept of subnets, we allow anybody to spin up their own chain using our Avalanche consensus and all our great tech without having to spend millions of dollars figuring out, which place they want to take from which virtual machine, blah, 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 blah. We give people tooling to create their own blockchain in the Avalanche ecosystem that they can do whatever rules they want with. So governments, let's say China's super, super strict. They have a lot of rules they want. An Avalanche subnet would be perfect for them because they can have their own blockchain with their own rules. They can have KYC if they wanted to. They can say this, that, this, that. You can only transact X many times a day. We give them the tooling to do that. And so there's 2 subnets live with users right now. There's the DeFi Kingdom subnet, which is a game that was on Harmony, but to scale, they came to an Avalanche subnet. So they have their own set of validators. They have their own set of rules. They have their native token is gas. So they don't even need to, no one needs to own Avalanche to use DeFi Kingdoms. They just need to have the Jewel token, which is the native for DeFi Kingdoms, to be able to use that chain. So it's its own ecosystem. And same with Corbata. It's an NFT game as well that has a similar mechanics. So right now for gaming, we're a pretty attractive choice because it's very Web 2 to Web 3 friendly. So all you need to do is buy whatever game's native token. They can write whatever rules they want. They can make it as scalable as they want. Even if they want to do gasless, they could do that. And they can also pick the virtual machine. Our engineering team is working hard on expanding so that you don't have to just use the EVM or the Ethereum virtual machine. You can use other virtual machines. You can make your own virtual machine, which there's a bunch of different use cases for. So the real pitch of Avalanche is subnets. So if you think of Cosmos and the...
That's what I was going to ask next. That's
yeah. So
nice intuition.
Exactly. So Cosmos has done a great job, really just, a lot of admiration to Cosmos and what they're doing. But that's kind of our biggest competition in the app chain thesis.
It's interesting. So you if I relate this back to Web 2, it's a platform, right? It is a place for people to go and leverage your technology to build their own ideas.
Right. Similar to AWS, right?
Yeah.
So we're trying to be the hammer and the nail.
So I guess, one of the trilemma, if you will, of Ethereum is that the reason they use one of the reasons they use the consensus module the way they do is because they want everybody to vote because it's safer. In this sense, the trade-off is you need less people for consensus, so it's more efficient, it's more scalable, but those people or those nodes that you are pinging are random. So if someone were to want to corrupt that decision-making process, if you will,
Yep.
you wouldn't know which of the many millions of nodes or however many nodes there are to corrupt because every time it's random groups. Right.
So I guess what we're referring to is like what's called like a 51% attack.
Yeah.
So so if you have 51% of the Ethereum nodes, or I guess the staked Ethereum now, I think, then that would be I guess a 51% attack. I think if you do the math with Avalanche, I think you need like 80% of the nodes to be able to successfully take over the network. So it's also, we also pride ourselves for being more secure.
What's Avalanche's take on the centralization versus decentralization kind of argument there?
Sure. So just like a small, I guess, note. I don't know what to say, but Avery's just speaking for Avery. Now that it's over with. I feel like I'll get in trouble if I spoke for Avalanche.
Yeah, these are not the opinions of Avalanche. This is the opinion
or whatever.
of Avery.
It's in my bio. I forget like what exactly verbiage they want me to say, but something along those lines is these are the opinions of Avery, whatever. So obviously decentralized is better. So our CEO, Emin Gunsir, he's been in the space, the distributed system space longer than almost anybody. So a nice anecdote of his, I guess, merit, the man who helped create the consensus, the man who helped, found the entire chain, is in 2003, he came up with something called Karma, which was a proof of work currency that was looking to solve the problem of, I guess, what's known now as torrenting, but of how people shared software back in the early 2000s with like Napster and LimeWire, where you would have a file on your computer and you would essentially seed it, or you would host it for other people to have. But the problem with that is, while you got a bunch of free music, but the problem with it is that people were downloading way more than people were hosting, and so because it needed to be decentralized and it needed to have enough people hosting that the system wouldn't clog up as it often did, he created, I guess, something called Karma. So you would essentially earn currency for hosting whatever file you wanted, whatever movie you wanted on your computer. Well, I shouldn't say movie because then it implies that it was illegal, but I'm sure he had good intentions for it. But hosting whatever file on your computer, you would get rewarded for it to encourage decentralization and encourage trust. And then you would spend those tokens to download other stuff. Point being there, I guess, going into the decentralization argument, is it's kind of like founded in his core beliefs and kind of like what he's always stood for. He's had some early contributions to, I guess, like Bitcoin. There were some very, very important papers on Bitcoin. And going further into that, part of the whole reasons he made the Avalanche consensus is to kind of like solve a problem where you could have a scalable solution that was also decentralized. I'm trying to, I'm trying to think of, I guess better ways to nail this down. But I guess coming from just a marketer and knowing his story, just saying our founder's core belief in his history, kind of emphasizes the design choices that he made when creating Avalanche.
Okay. I mean, that's totally fair. I mean, I guess that what I was getting at is that a common topic that comes up in order to put Web3 into the mainstream is like this kind of identity crisis with decentralist maxis and people that just want adoption, right? And the theory that I prescribe to is progressive decentralization. Mm-hmm. Which I don't know if you're familiar with, but it is the practical approach, in my opinion, which is When you start a company, you're still a startup, right? You're not immediately a DAO, or else no decisions get made. You have to have leadership. You have to have vision. You have to be able to make decisions without considering, just like the consensus algorithm, just without considering every single person in the room, or else you get nothing done. So go do that. Find product market fit. Once you've found product market fit, if your mission is to be decentralized, then you start to find meaningful contributors, right? And you start to decentralize through those meaningful contributors. And then after you've done that, then you start to figure out, how can I loop in the community to certain decisions that we feel like will be helpful? Does that make sense?
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. That is interesting. Because I know kind of like the workflow we have for, I guess, still from the perspective that we are AWS. While we do definitely like we're still building the Avalanche chain, so updates on the entire chain still happen, but we don't own every validator by any means, right? So it's just something that people can opt into, opt out. It's not forced. We can't stop the chain. There's no button we can hit to stop the chain. There's no button we can hit to, lock things up and make decisions on it. There's absolutely no button, because it's all up to the validators. But obviously, there's still a lot more to be done as far as technology goes, as far as building the chain, as far as making subnets as easy as possible to onboard. So there's definitely still some changes being made by the Avalanche or Avalabs, who are trying to maintain this chain. So there definitely is a middle balance, right? Like there's no software updates going to Bitcoin, and that's one thing that makes it so great. But it's also one thing that people are most frustrated with, is because it's it was made for 2008, right? Not 2022. So is it the fastest, most eco-friendly chain on the planet? We love it. We love it for what it is. We love it that it's decentralized. We love that no one can touch it, but it's not those things. So we feel like to compete and to kind of be able to make the difference that we want in this world, competing against such amazing products, such amazing competition, there does have to be an ability to say, hey, we have this great upgrade coming. Validators are, if you're okay with this, let's go through with it. So yeah, there's definitely a middle ground, definitely.
So let's switch gears a little bit. We're coming up on the top of the hour. I've got two traditional closing questions I always ask, but I've got to ask you one more question about the way that Avalanche or Avalabs thinks about the role of community and brand. How do you think about that?
So I feel like we've done a great job. This is before I was in the company. This was the people that started it, and kind of what got me so interested in Avalanche. I think they've done a great job with community. They put so much emphasis, so much passion to listening to the community, to building them up. If they have projects coming up, we will help them any way we can. I just came from San Francisco with something called Avalanche Creates, where we had a bunch of projects thinking about building on the chain or already building on the chain. We had our CEO fly out. We had Goon fly out. We had our VP of engineering, one of the smartest who's ever been in the same room as, just come to all these talk to all these projects, say, hey, what are you working on? How can we help? We also have VCs. If you do a great job, like, pitch to them. We set it all up. So, and it's also just in our best interest to make the community as strong as possible. If we are trying to be, more of an AWS, and we're trying to build the hammers, we're trying to, build the tools for people to build what they want, it is absolutely in our best interest to do everything we can for the community. And that's even half of my job. Half of my job is reaching out to people saying, hey, what are you working on? Let's co-market it. Let's use our platform to bump up whatever software you're on. Let's use my platform, our platform, to try and show people all the cool things that you're working on. So it's like selfishly so important for us to do everything we can to build the community and to make sure there's as many red triangle emojis on Twitter as possible.
I didn't know that was your thing. This will definitely be part of my tweet out. And it's interesting, like you view yourself as an enabler, as building an ecosystem where the community should feel safe building in your space, knowing that you've got their back, right? Knowing that you're going to enable them as much as you possibly can, because it is not a zero-sum game for Avalabs. It is a positive-sum game. When they succeed, you succeed.
Exactly.
Which is really cool. Well, I really appreciate the time today. I've got my 2 final closing questions. The first one is, how do you describe Web3?
That's a good one. There's many, many different angles. Okay, so it allows anybody in the world to access the best computing power with the biggest audience possible. So I could be in, I don't know, Antarctica, have a great idea of way to decentralize Uber, write a great smart contract, deploy it onto Ethereum with no one's permission but my own. If I do a good job marketing, it's the best code possible. As long as it's good code, as long as it's a good experience, it's going to do well, right? I don't need to worry about getting an AWS account, getting a Google Cloud GCP account. I don't have to worry about anything. And anybody in the world can access this code and not only access it, but also build upon it. So I feel like it's just a more composable internet, a more accessible internet, and a way for open source ideas to kind of have a compounding effect into the future. There's so many different angles I can answer that question from. I literally just made a video about this, but kind of wanted to spin my own definition on it. But yeah, simply just an internet accessible, owned by everyone, orchestrated by a token.
I love that.
So
I love that. Yeah. My final question is forward looking. Where do you see yourself in Web3 as an industry in 6 to 12 months? And where do you see yourself in Web3 in the next 5 to 10 years?
Awesome. So hopefully in the next few months, I'm going to be doing the exact same thing, just a lot better at it. I'll know a lot more of what the audience wants. I'll be a lot better at video editing. I'll just be better at my job, doing the exact same thing, but doing better at the job. Next 5 to 10 years, obviously that's a guessing game. I don't even like making predictions that far out for any reason.
Be fun.
Okay. So is this for me or is this for the industry?
Both.
Okay. So for the industry, I want, let's say, I think it's reasonable to say I want 40% of all computing to kind of go through the blockchain in the world. 40%, which is a ton. Right now, it's probably less than 1. I think 40% of all the computing of all businesses, of all monetary policy, of all financial transactions accessible to anyone in the world, going through the blockchain. It doesn't have to, I guess, I'll say going through Web3, because I guess blockchain is kind of becoming outdated because, you have companies like HBAR not even using blockchain.
Yeah.
So I'll just say going through Web3. And for me, that's impossible. That's an absolutely impossible question. Hopefully I'll still be in marketing. I love marketing. That's it. That's all I'm going to say. I don't know.
I can say what you don't want to say.
What do I want to say?
You want to be running marketing at a great company like Avalabs.
That would be cool. Maybe it would. Maybe it wouldn't. I don't know. It's just because if you asked me, Avery, 5 years ago what I'd be doing, I don't think the word Web3 existed. I don't think TikTok existed. So it's like, what's going to exist in the future, that I'll be interested in,
That's fair. That's fair. But you do know that you like the marketing aspect of whatever it is
marketing.
You'll be doing. Yeah.
I love marketing. Yeah. Maybe I'll be running marketing for the United States of America subnet.
Awesome, man. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on, Avery.
Yeah,
it's been a super fun conversation, and I'm super glad to know a fellow Atlanta blockchain person. So thanks.
Yeah, absolutely, Zach. Yeah, it was great to flex these muscles again, man. They feel weak, but I love podcasting, so it's awesome. Absolute pleasure.
All right. Thanks, man. Thanks for tuning in to Web3 with me. If you enjoyed the show and want to help us grow, please hit the subscribe button on YouTube or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you want to connect with me personally, you can find me on Twitter @Zach_French_.